Welcome back, guys. In the last segment, we talked about the people and the properties and who controls and who doesn't, and why that's important for you to understand. In this segment, we're going to talk about talent. Now, I know this might seem intuitive. It might actually seem counterintuitive once I say what I'm going to say, because I think what I'm about to tell you, you kind of know, but you probably aren't being told this. And the reason why, it'll be obvious. So I'm going to jump right into it. As artists, we tend to think of our talent, of our abilities. I'm a good songwriter. I'm a good guitar player. I'm a good singer. I can do this really well, or our band has done really well. Or sometimes even looking back at past successes and saying, we're good. I mean, and ultimately, as artists, I think we always want to look at talent. And we want to, it may not be healthy for us. It may not be advisable. But it's human nature to kind of compare and contrast and say, well, I think we're more talented than that band, or I think I've written a better song than that songwriter. Here's a secret for the music industry. The industry doesn't care so much about your talent. Today, certainly not. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, absolutely. And let me contrast what I mean by that. 30 years ago, 20 years ago, we cared about your talent, we being the music industry, because there were gatekeepers. You couldn't get to an audience without getting through a gate. The record labels, the distribution mechanism. You had no way of getting there. And so what we wanted was the best and the brightest to get in front of people, because then we know we can make money. Now that all that's opened up, and the gatekeepers aren't the same. There are gatekeepers, and we'll get into that in another video, but they're not the same gatekeepers in the same way. So today, it's not so much about talent. It's about who can build a fire. And then who fuels that fire. And what I mean by that, and this is where I say it's intuitive and you already should be thinking about this, but you're probably not being told this, which is when you think about an artist today, you have to build your own fan base. You have to be your own marketing company. You have to get people interested in listening to you, into showing up at your shows. You have to be responsible for that. And especially as an independent artist, we say, well, yeah, of course. If I'm not making people, show up, if I'm not giving them a way to show up, if I'm not putting on shows, or if I'm not writing great songs, they're not going to show up. So it's on me. And we sort of instinctively know that it's on me to build the fire. Well, guess what? When you think, there are a lot of independent artists where their goal becomes, well, I just want to build and build and build, but I want to sign to a big record label, I want to get a big deal, a record deal. And they start thinking like this. But part of the flaw in that thinking is that they think once they get that big deal, they can shut off all the efforts of fueling the flame. And here's the thing you need to understand right now where we're at in the music industry is it's your job to create the fire. It's your job to fuel the fire. It's the label's job to help fuel the fire, to support with strategic uses. So if you think I camp a lot, so I'm going to use a camping analogy, but I'll try and just simplify it for every person. You don't start a fire with one giant log, right? You started with what we might call tinder, basically like, some wood shavings, or maybe like if you have a paper plate you just got done eating your picnic meal with, and you shove it under there or tear it up, but small pieces, right? Small pieces, and then a little bit larger, some twigs and some sticks that are a little thicker can grab that flame. Then we get into the larger logs. And so you don't see people start fires with giant logs. You see them start with little slivers of wood and paper, right? And then bigger, a little bigger, a little bigger. The music industry today is much the same way, except who's expected to do it is you. And so I know a lot of independent artists are like, Brock, that's so wrong, that's so unfair, that just shouldn't be, but that is the reality. So this is also a part of what frustrates independent artists enough to say, well, that's reason enough for me to not even consider going with a record label. What are they going to do for me? And coupled with, and I can distribute and I can do all this on my own, I don't really need a record label. But I want you to think about it. The point of this segment is to highlight a couple of things. One being, talent is no longer the answer. It's an answer, part of an answer. But as we've seen on TikTok and as we've seen on YouTube and other platforms, talent isn't necessarily always there. or at least not in the way we would intuitively think. Sometimes talent is just about the ability to gather eyeballs or viewers or listeners, right? Sometimes that is the talent. It's not that somebody, think about like Miranda Sings or Charli D'Amelio, like Charli D'Amelio, not the greatest dancer, but maybe the talent isn't dancing. Maybe the talent is the energy that aggregates people around her. Or Miranda Sings, obviously, or at least when she's in character, not the greatest singer, but that was never the talent, right? The talent wasn't being a great singer. She's not trying to be Idina Menzel or Ariana Grande or something. She's trying to be funny. And that energy and that silly slapstick off humor, whatever, is what draws people. So what I want you to start to understand about this fundamental is that artists still to this day focus so much on talent. And you should always want to be a better artist. You should always want to be a more accomplished musician or singer if you one or both. You should always want to be a better songwriter. So go attend songwriter camps. Go learn more about songwriting and the art of songwriting. Go become a better guitar player, take vocal lessons, whatever it is. So talent you should always be working to achieve. But in my history of working in the music industry, which is now including time, anyways, it's been decades, multiple decades. I look at it and I say, talent is just this one little, silo or a ball or a bucket over here. There's also a magic. Are you energetic? Do you have something that people care about? But there's also this ability to aggregate people around you. Can you draw a crowd? Can you draw people who actually care about what you're doing? Because if you could do that, and you could gather an audience of fans, and you could gather people who will listen, you've now created the fire, right? So you didn't pay a record label to create fire for you. It's not like the record label signed some, quote, undiscovered talent who had 2 fans and suddenly they have 2 million. That's not how it happens anymore. How it happens now is you create the fire. You bring the fans to the table. And we'll get in another segment when we talk about social media and other platforms to do that. But for here, work up your talent, but start building a fire. And that fire is your fans and your followers. And then start fueling it. And you fuel it by consistent content. We're going to also talk about consistency and things like that. But when you think about the rest of the record industry and the music publishing industry as well, the fuel that those entities bring, the record labels, the music publishers, is supplemental to what you've created. They don't create it, you do. They don't fully fuel it, you do. They supplement the fuel. But part of how they supplement is it's almost like pouring gas on a flame. They know how to trigger it properly, or at least that's the idea. I think there's a lot of people that argue they actually don't even know what they're doing anymore. I'm not even going to get into that. What I'm going to say is it's like pouring gasoline or lighter fluid on an existing flame. It's going to, and that's where the industry knows or is supposed to know what it's doing to fuel you further towards success. So this is a fundamental. We can get sort of in and out quickly. We're going to jump into the next one. If this is helping you, again, like and subscribe. Send this series out to people. If you know other independent artists that you know would benefit from this information, this way of thinking, and you want to help them become successful, then share this video with a friend or with another artist, and I'd appreciate that. I'll see you in the next segment.